Where's mute? There it is.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to ordinary meeting 4521 of Hunters Hill Council. Could I ask you all to be upstanding? I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet, of elders past, present and emerging, and I'll just hand over to Pastor Alex Brancher for the prayer.
Heavenly Father, we give you thanks today for this opportunity to come together, to work together, and to make decisions on things that really matter to us. I pray that there be wisdom flowing from you to all those who are decision makers, who are voting, who are interested in the stewardship of properties and so on around the Hunters Hill area. I thank you, Lord God, that we can be free in this nation to be able to pray, to ask your wisdom in on these matters. And I ask that every person here be blessed by the time they spend here tonight, and that they would work together, one with each other, for the best of this lovely, fantastic area that we live in. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated, and thank you, Pastor Alex.
Okay.
The proceedings of all council meetings in open session, including all debate and addresses by the public, are recorded and webcast live on council's website for the purpose of facilitating community access. Webcasting archives are stored and available to the public on council's website. The recordings may be disclosed under the provisions of the Government Information Public Access Act of 2009, the GIPA Act. Members of the public attending council meeting may have their image, voice and personal information, including their name and address, recorded, publicly broadcast and archived, or as an observer or other interested party, members of the public consent to this use of their image, voice and personal information. I don't have any apologies. We have councillors Williams and councillor Quinn joining us via Zoom link. They're both overseas and happily represented council at the Fête de Marguerite Le Visenay for the 35th anniversary celebrations of the Friendship Pact between Hunters Hill and Le Visenay. Could I ask for any declarations of interest, councillors? No declarations of interest. That being the case, I'll move to confirmation of minutes of ordinary meeting 4519 held 22 May 2023. Moved Councillor Crassoy, seconded Councillor Prieston. Any discussion? Councillor Sanderson?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just have a comment in relation to the confidential item 8.1. It's marked as resolution 105/23. It appears on page 16 of the minutes. It's important that the foreshadowed motion that I put at that time is recorded, but the minute records it as the motion was not carried. In fact, the motion was never put. And again, we have some confusion because the minutes are not reflecting the chronological order in which the meeting took place.
Is this in item 8.1, Councillor?
Yep.
And you're saying that the motion wasn't seconded?
Well, it didn't need to be seconded. It was a foreshadowed motion. So therefore it was in the record and it should be recorded, but it was not lost because it was never put.
We'll get it amended, Councillor Sanderson. I just need to check on that. Yep. Councillors, any other questions or debate? If not, I'll put the minutes. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. I move to item 2, confirmation of minutes of the extraordinary meeting 4520 held 19th of June 2023. Moved Councillor Crassoy, seconded Councillor Prieston. Any discussion? Any debate? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. I now move to item 2.1, which is a mayoral minute in relation to Hunters Hill residents recognised in the King's Birthday Honours list. Once I find it, and I'll read the report. On the 12th of June 2023, the Governor-General of the Commonwealth of Australia, His Excellency Governor-General, the Honourable David Hurley, ACDSC, announced 1,192 awards in the King's Birthday Honours list. Among other recipients were those residing or actively involved in the Hunters Hill community. One was appointed to as a member of the Order of Australia, and one was awarded a Medal of the Order of Australia. Dr. Richard Jones was appointed a member of the Order of Australia for the significant service to medicine in the field of spinal injury and rehabilitation, including through the Prince Henry Prince of Wales Hospital, the Royal Australian College of Physicians, Paraplegic and Quadriplegic Association of New South Wales, now Forward Ability Support, and other organisations, medical and sports disability fields. Rita Leptian, founder and chair of the Hunters Hill Symphony Orchestra, was awarded a Medal of the Order of Australia and for her service to the community through orchestra and a range of other organisations, including the Armenian Chamber of Commerce and Community Arts. We congratulate the recipients and thank them for their contribution to our community. Councillors, is there any discussion? The recommendations are that we receive and note the report, and that a letter of congratulations be awarded, sent to the two recipients of those Australia Day honours. Councillor Crassoy, speaking to the motion.
I will, Mr. Mayor, thank you. It's just such a privilege to be part of a community when you read that list of achievements that these people have done in pursuit of their work, but good work, and in pursuit of their communities as well. I would also note that Helen Banu, the CEO of Streetworks, who is heavily involved in our area as well, was also mentioned on the King's Birthday Honours list. And I just, although she's not a resident of Hunters Hill, she's actively involved here, and she's championing defibrillators in all of our sporting clubs around the suburbs. So I just wanted to make a little note that she's also someone worth noting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Crassoy. Any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Councillors, I'll now move to the mayoral minute. 2.2, acknowledging the passing of Mr. Peter O'Meara. I'll read the report. It is with deep sadness that we recognise the passing of Hunters Hill resident Peter O'Meara. Peter passed away on the 6th of June 2023. A requiem mass for the eternal repose of the soul of Peter was offered at the Mary Mother of Mercy Chapel, Rockwood Catholic Cemetery on the 17th of June. At the conclusion of the service, Peter was laid to rest in the adjoining cemetery grounds. Peter was well known for his work in the Catholic community and in sports administration, both locally and nationally. In March 2023, Peter received the papal honour of knighthood from the Vatican, the Knight Commander's Cross of the Order of St. Gregory the Great. This is the fourth highest award that is presented by the Vatican. It recognised Peter's extraordinary legacy as a faithful Catholic layman, his tireless promotion of the corporal works of mercy, and his lifetime of service to the Church and the wider community, including through his role as the Chief Executive Officer of Catholic Cemeteries and Crematoria. Peter was also well known in the rugby union community, particularly for his time in the early 2000s as the CEO of the Western Force Rugby Club. He was a leading figure in turning the Western Force from a concept into an extremely successful Super 14s team. Peter was an integral fundraiser and advocate for the sporting and community facility at Boronia Park, and a fierce supporter of the Hunters Hill Rugby Club's efforts to deliver this new infrastructure. It is a great sadness that his desire to have a beer at the first home game at the new grandstand will not become a reality, but he will no doubt be honoured by the club for his tireless efforts in its delivery. Following Peter's passing, the O'Meara family has organised a GoFundMe fundraising campaign in aid of charity Cure for MND Foundation Incorporated in memory of their husband, father and grandfather. Cure for MHD Foundation Incorporated Fight MND aims to raise awareness for funds and research into a cure for motor neuron disease. councillors, the recommendations is that the report be received and noted, and that a letter of condolence be forwarded to the Amara family. It moved, councillor. Don't need to move it. But is there any speakers to the motion? No speakers. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Now move to item 2.3 on the agenda. The Mayoral Minute Reform Agenda on Waste. The recommendation I will read out. I won't read the report because the report is quite sizable, but the recommendation is that council works with other Sydney councils on A, reducing waste, B, improving environmental outcomes where waste has to be processed, and C, finding solutions for the residue that is left. 2, the council asks the New South Wales government to invest revenue from its waste levy for council and industry initiatives that A, accelerate the transition to a circular economy, B, build the waste infrastructure needed to meet the growing pressures of population growth, loss and landfill capacity, and lack of competition in the sector, and that C, educate and support communities to reduce waste. The Deputy Mayor has asked me to add an additional point 3 and point 4. Point 3 being that council asks the federal government to expedite bans on materials that cannot be recycled or recovered, and to increase extended producer responsibilities. And that 4, the council inform the community of these initiatives, including our regional waste strategy, and provide ongoing direction and education on opportunities for household behaviour change and advocacy to all tiers of government. Councillors, as many of you would be aware, the rates levy that is a requirement of the state government is levied by council on residents. It is part of our rates cap, and we receive back 7% of that waste levy in services. So some 93% of the rates levy that our residents pay is not reallocated back into council funds or local programs. It is chewed up as part of the state government's budget as a statutory fee that is levied on this community. And what this resolution is what this mayoral minute is asking essentially is for the state government to expend the funds levied on our ratepayers in Hunters Hill. Any speakers to this this amendment? I will put the 2 additional items and the full suite of the mayoral minute on the screen if I could. So I've adopted those 2 additional points. Councillors, any discussion? Councillor Preston.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to commend the recommendation and the report that you brought to us tonight. And I wanted to just note the hard work of council and the council staff a fortnight ago when we held the first Hunters Hill Sustainability Fair. I attended and assisted on a stall, which was I can't remember what it was called now, but it was like Bike and Blend, I think, where we were making smoothies by the kinetic energy of spinning a bike, stationary bike, and that was a real hit amongst the community. That was held at the Hillman Orchard, and I understand that there are a number of other successful stalls stationed around the suburb, and that council has received a lot of praise for the event and that it went really well. I would just like to suggest that we look to host more of these sorts of events that help inform our community of the various initiatives that council is undertaking hand in hand, hopefully with the state government and the federal government going forward. For example, to educate people on how they can best recycle and best not contribute to the waste issue that we're experiencing at the moment in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Preston. I'm sure as the chair of the events committee, you can organise a couple of additional events. Any other speakers to the mayoral minute? Councillor Crassoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much for extending an invitation for me to attend that mayoral summit. It was fascinating and such a privilege and a delight to be at a summit organised by the City of Sydney with all mayors from all over Sydney attending. This is a crisis and it's on our doorstep already. We're going to run out of landfill by 2035, and yet the state government is challenging us to step up and find ways to dispose of our waste, but not supporting us in any way on how to and how to process it. The absolute solution is not to generate the waste in the first place, and the responsibility therefore has to come back to the governments to stop manufacturers from producing products that cannot be repurposed or re-engineered into circular economy systems. So this is a great start. It says that the mayors of Sydney are united in advocating to state and federal government and alongside each other at finding real solutions. So congratulations. And as the chair of the Sustainability Committee, I'm very excited that all of Sydney's on board with this.
Thank you, councillor. Councillors, any other discussion? Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I endorse your minute. This has been an ongoing problem with the waste levy not being dedicated to local waste or dealing with local waste. So I was very involved in that in the last term of council. I'm delighted that you continue the fight.
Thank you, councillor Sanderson. Any other discussion, councillors? If not, I'll put the mayor on minute. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Councillors, I have a late report.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Just clarify, Councillor Williams, is he voting for or against that?
Sorry, councillor Williams, were you voting for or against that? We just, your hand was a bit slow. You need to unmute, councillor Williams.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that. It's on a
Sorry.
iPhone. A little difficult. Yeah, no, I supported it.
Okay, thank you,
I think
councillor.
it's great. Yeah.
Just must be in the late.
Councillors, I have a late item, and noting that there are a number of speakers to that item, I think that it would be appropriate that we move it up the agenda so that we don't keep everyone waiting. Move councillor Crassoy, second to councillor Sanderson. Any discussion? If not, I'll put it all those in favour. Against? That's carried. We now move to late item 1 of the Montefiore planning proposal. We have a number of speakers to this item. And our first speaker is Mrs. Heather Armstrong. Ms. Armstrong, you have 3 minutes.
Evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councillors. This planning proposal for a $300 million apartment development of 144 units and 288 car park spaces should not be considered as a single ad hoc change to aged care and seniors housing in our municipality. As a proper and supported assessment, it must be deferred and dealt with on a whole of municipality master plan basis, which includes assessment of all 8 seniors housing and aged care facilities in our municipality. The only way to deal with this planning proposal on a fair and proper basis is as part of the local environmental plan review, which is currently in train. The fact that the local housing strategy suggested that Montefiore is an appropriate site for more dense seniors housing does not justify allowing this planning proposal to proceed as a standalone proposal. If this planning proposal is approved, it will be the start of a chaotic series of planning proposals for the same zone change to allow higher density seniors housing in the municipality. The height increase 26 metres sought for this development will allow apartment blocks up to 8 and possibly 10 if you have lower ceilings, stories high. This is a significant height increase, from the 2 stories currently allowed, and create a significant profit for the developer. Hence, it is an advantage all seniors housing facilities are likely to seek, and this heralds change across the entire municipality. This very significant planning proposal was agreed to by council last Monday, 19 June, listed for review by the local planning panel 4 days later on Thursday, 22 June, recommending that it be accepted and sent to the Minister for Planning and Environment for a gateway determination as to whether it should be accepted and the rezoning allowed, and if so, on what terms, if any. The local planning panel had 2 days to absorb about 1,000 pages of technical material and reports in relation to the planning proposal. After its hearing on Thursday morning, its decision was handed down the next day, Friday, 23 June. Later that day, council placed the rezoning proposal on this meeting's agenda as yet another late Friday afternoon item, a practice which is quite common. Despite the request by the local planning panel for more time and more reports, the matter was added late yesterday as a late item to this meeting. Procedurally, then, council has acted improperly by not allowing enough time for either the public or the local planning panel to assess the proposal. To refer 1,000 pages of material to the panel in that time framing is clearly unfair. This proposal will have a huge impact on Bronia Park, the surrounding Bronia Park suburb. It will become a mini city and it has a huge impact on all of us in this precinct. There has also been a clear attempt to avoid public scrutiny. Council reneged on its resolution in 2022 to hold a public meeting prior to making a decision on the planning proposal. Public consultation has been very inadequate, even though Montefiore was happy to have a public meeting, but council did not agree. The public must be adequately informed with sufficient time to respond to this suburb-wide proposed change. The resolutions of the local planning panel last Friday, 23 June, must be respected and acted upon. This planning proposal should be deferred to be dealt with as part of the LEP review. It is necessary to assess the need for seniors and aged housing across the whole municipality on properly researched bases and not just industry trends and census data, which supported the local housing strategy, and then decide on the appropriate response to any demonstrated and properly researched need for such housing. Lastly, I refer to an article in today's Sydney Morning Herald dealing with Bayside Council's deferral of consideration of a proposal to demolish 26 ageing units.
Sorry, councillors, Councillor Sanderson, seconded Councillor Preston, extension of time. All those in favour? Against? That is carried.
Thank you. To demolish 26 ageing public housing units in Mascot and build 152 new apartments, 45 of them public housing in buildings up to 8 stories, which was double what the LEP allows. They once again need a planning proposal and a zoning change. Bayside Council says no. We need another 1 or 2 years to investigate the area's potential and draft its own master plan. This, of course, caused a reprimand from the Housing Minister, Rose Jackson, but council stuck to its guns. A report by council officers that it was unanimously endorsed by councillors said that proceeding with the development before a master plan was completed would set an undesirable precedent, lead to ad hoc planning, and undermine any future vision of this kind of Botany Road. While the panel understands the need for affordable and social housing, this is a strategically important precinct which requires an appropriate level of investigation to enable master planning. And one of the council said it is vital that these sites were not planned in isolation. The LEP is a particular height for a particular reason. Doubling it without proper investigation is clearly inappropriate. So it's not just here that we have this pressure to push on an ad hoc basis where the zoning proposal is going to affect every other aged housing facility in Hunters Hill. This kind of push is happening in other municipalities as well, and councils are standing up to it and saying quite properly, we need a rational plan for the whole municipality. This is an important decision. It will have a flow-on effect to all the other aged housing in our municipality, and it must be considered properly, fairly, and with adequate public scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Armstrong. Just clarifying one of the points that you made, you said that we abandoned our resolution of 2022 to hold a public meeting prior to the determination to Gateway.
Correct.
That is not the case. No determination has been made to go to Gateway. There is a standing resolution of this council to have a public meeting prior to the Gateway determination.
I'm sorry, I didn't say that. Not prior to the Gateway determination. Prior to council accepting the planning proposal.
No, if you read the resolution was that prior to Gateway determination, upon acceptance of the planning proposal, prior to Gateway, that a public meeting would be held, and that is a standing resolution of this council.
Fine. The question then becomes, when will this public meeting be held? The later these meetings are.
Well, the question I guess will be grappled with tonight is if you hold a public meeting prior to Gateway, the feedback that you get at that meeting will not be counted to by the state government as formal consultation. So certainly we can have a public meeting, and that is the standing resolution. But if a public meeting is held during the Gateway determination period, which is the formal process in which you assess and provide feedback as the public, then that would be counted as a consultation, and everything that is recorded in that meeting would then become feedback for the assessors. Now, that's not the case at the moment. We have a standing resolution, and we'll have to deal with that. But when you say that the council has abandoned the resolution, that's not factual.
Certainly, but of course, I understand that legally there's no requirement for a public hearing prior to the gateway process. Once it goes to gateway, then there's a requirement to have the public hearing. But the fact is, this is going to be an enormous change in our area. And as a matter of fairness and communication and all the nice things said in our publicly available communication strategy for Hunters Hill Council, we should be keeping the public informed. This is not fair.
We agree with you. Councillors, any questions of Ms Armstrong? Councillor Cresswell.
Thank you for your also for your presentation. Oh, thank you. Let me speak up. Oh, no, certainly we're just. I wanted to ask, do you feel that the recommendations of the planning panel go far enough?
There is, I understand, a resolution being put forward tonight by Councillor Sanderson, and which I endorse. And the resolutions of the planning panel go part of the way towards that necessary determination. We need more time. I've been through the 1,000 pages. It took me 6 hours until 4 a.m. People do quickly. There's a lot more in there. That's right. There's a lot more in there than can be absorbed by anybody rationally, sensibly. Clearly, it was ridiculous to ask the planning panel to have absorbed that material in the 2 or 3 days, business days they had before the hearing. This needs proper investigation. There's a discussion, for example, about, the whole thing is about pushing the development over to Barron's Crescent.
I just want to get to done this because
Yeah,
more people.
sure.
So my question was,
Yes.
do you think the recommendations of the planning panel go far enough?
Putting me on the spot because I can't really compare this quickly to what our resolution that we've seen supports. I would suggest that there needs to be a deferral, and in that process, we need to be considering what extra material we need, and that might go very much wider than what we've currently got and have a different basis. But yes, I certainly support everything that the planning panel has resolved. It might be necessary for us to go further to consider, for example, my suggestion that there be a master plan for the entire municipality in terms of aged care planning.
Councillors, any other questions of Mrs Armstrong? If not, thank you, Heather. Thank you. I'll now call Mr Robert Hayes. Bob, for short. Mr Hayes, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I apologise in advance. I'm afraid my voice has given up on me, but I'll persevere. I represent the Montefiore Redevelopment Community Action Association, a group of local residents concerned about the proposed Montefiore redevelopment. The planning proposal was considered by the expert independent local planning panel on Thursday, 22nd June, just 4 working days after its release on the council website. The LPP resolved, 1, that the LPP does not support sending the planning proposal to gateway determination. And secondly, the LPP also provided 5 points of advice to council as part of their resolution. I won't read those, they're in there. We fully agree with and support all the resolutions of the LPP. However, we have additional recommendations to supplement the LPPs, namely, 1, council should adopt and implement all of the LPP's resolutions in full. Council should also resolve that 2, this current planning proposal should be rejected due to its significant inadequacies, which I will now outline. 3, Montefiore should rectify these and reduce the impacts through smaller scale development. We have 4 main objections to the planning proposal and associated processes. Firstly, the rezoning and redevelopment sought in the proposal is contrary to the fundamental aims and principles of the current LEP and likely future ones. It will severely and permanently impact on the character, identity, amenity, and integrity of existing neighbourhoods. Specific impacts include inappropriate building scale, height, and mass, dramatically changing the current low-rise residential character and identity of the local area. 4-storey buildings along Barons Crescent with only 7 metres setback and 6-storey buildings 50 metres behind those buildings will destroy the current streetscapes. The major underground car park and loading dock entry in Barons Crescent will cause disruption, noise and safety risks. There will be 24/7 activity across the site. This redevelopment is more for the 50+ demographic, more than aged care. There'll be increased traffic and congestion in Barons Crescent and local approach roads. Privacy lost, views compromised, overshadowing and construction disruption for at least 2 years. In the proposal, these impacts...
Councillors, sorry, Mr Hayes, move the extension of time, moved Councillor Sanderson, seconded Councillor Preston. All those in favour? Against? Voted carried.
Thank you. In the proposal, these impacts are understated, not identified or dismissed. We believe the building height across the entire Montefiore site should be 2 stories to match the surrounding local area. To do this, the scale of development should be reduced to around 80 apartments. The car park and loading dock entrance in Barons Crescent should be scrapped. Our second objection is that the redevelopment is incompatible with 2 out of the 3 SP2 zoning objectives. Regarding project objectives, the loss of 334 aged care beds and replacement with 144 premium apartments for the 50+ demographic is not transparently explained or justified in terms of government and council aged care objectives. The project looks much more like property development for profit than aged care. Regarding project impacts, how Montefiore will minimise adverse impacts on surrounding land and neighbourhoods is also not adequately explained or justified. Serious impacts are either ignored, underestimated, understated, or self-assessed as not being a problem. The proposal is therefore lacking and fails to meet key government planning proposal guidelines. Third objection, any Montefiore rezoning will impact the wider municipality by setting a strong precedent. Fourth objection, council's process of evaluating the 1,000+ proposals' adequacy, assessing it and informing and consulting the community is grossly inadequate. It's been extremely rushed, lacking easy to find information, transparency, promised community consultation and reasonable due process. Our recommendations in conclusion are the council should adopt and implement all the local planning panel's resolutions. Council should reject the Montefiore planning proposal in its current form due to its inadequacies. Thirdly, Montefiore should be instructed to correct those inadequacies and resubmit for further assessment. And finally, council must respect the community by allowing reasonable time for proper consideration and due process, including a community consultation meeting within 4 weeks, with 4 weeks advance notice. I've emailed to all the councillors today a detailed document with our group's objections and recommendations, if you care to look at that in more detail.
Thank you, Mr Hayes. Councillors, any questions of Mr Hayes? Not. Thank you, Mr Hayes.
Okay.
I'll now call Mr Alistair Sharp. Welcome, Mr Sharp. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This evening I'm speaking for Hunters Hill Trust. The Montefiore site has a number of buildings and provides us residential aged care in 2-storey buildings. The planning proposal seeks to alter the LEP to allow these 2 buildings up to 26 metres high, and that is 8 stories of normal sort of height, generous height. This is inappropriate for the site, and the Trust is concerned that it also sets a precedent throughout the Hunters Hill. Now, the previous speakers have said that. The proposal claims that it would provide a net increase in aged care accommodation, but their proposal explains that they're already reducing the number of residential aged care beds. They've already reduced it by more than 1/3. Whereas the proposal is not to provide residential aged care at all, is to provide self-contained apartments to cater for, presumably to cater for the 50+ crowd for downsizers. It's not residential aged care at all. This is stated to be only the first stage of a redevelopment of the site. You're asked to consider to approve this without knowing what is in mind for a second stage. Kieran Metcalf explains that this is just the first stage. I think it would be quite reasonable for council to return to the proponents and ask them what their thoughts are for a second stage, because how can you make a decision on stage one when you know there's going to be a stage two? Mr. Mayor, I'm going to quote the exact resolution of the 21st of November. The resolution was that should council form a view that the proposal has, well, it says have strategic merit, council hold a community consultation meeting at the town hall as soon as practicable and before submission by council for gateway determination. It's quite clear that you haven't done that. You're in breach
Mr. Sharp, could I just stop you there?
No, I'd rather.
No, Mr. Sharp, please. The resolution that you just quoted.
Yes. It's a problem.
Sorry, Mr. Sharp. The resolution you just quoted is, as I said to the previous speaker, that if the council staff, professional staff, formed an opinion that the proposal had strategic merit, and prior to a determination for gateway, which is not part of the resolution tonight, that a public meeting would be held as soon as practicable. Now, that is a process that is currently underway, and any suggestion otherwise is incorrect. So I would ask that you speak truthfully about where the council is, because I've clarified that point already.
May I ask you, are you arguing?
You can finish your statement, and then you can get asked questions by councillors.
So you can ask. You can speak to me, but I can't speak to you.
As chair of this council, yes, I can, Mr. Sharp.
The trust calls on council tonight to set a date for a public meeting. Perhaps you've referred to call a community consultation, allowing adequate notice of at least 3 weeks for the community to acquaint itself with the proposal without hesitation. We think you should do that now. We also note with concern that Mr. Metcalf, I'm sorry, I dealt with that bit. While increasing accommodation for people wishing to downsize, the proposal reduces residential aged care. It doesn't increase residential aged care. It actually, if you project what the second stage of this might be, perhaps they're going to exit a residential aged care altogether. That would be a logical extension of this. So it's of no benefit to the community in terms of aged care. And as other speakers have said, it creates a dreadful precedent.
Sorry, Mr. Sharp. Moved Councillor Sanderson, extension of time, seconded Councillor Crasaway. Any discussion? If not, move. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried.
Council Trust asks that the panel's advice be taken seriously by council. I think it was extremely disrespectful for you to send a proposal to the local planning panel, your local planning panel, at such incredibly short notice, a proposal of 1,100 pages of closely argued discussion. That was extremely disrespectful, and I'm sorry to have to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Any questions of Dr. Sharp, councillors? If not, thank you, Dr. Sharp.
Thank you.
I now call Mrs. Karen Raisin. Mrs. Raisin, you have 3 minutes.
Sorry?
You have 3 minutes.
Oh, 3 minutes. I thought you said 2. I was really worried then. Before we commence, for those that have got a voice that projects, you can be heard. But for those that don't, it's impossible to hear back here. And I have sent this and lots of letters, and I've had replies from council staff that you will amplify microphones for the public. And I just hope that in the next budget, somebody has remembered to put it in. I couldn't really hear, but I've gathered enough information that my first paragraph I've literally got to do away with. But I do speak tonight as a long-term resident of Barons Crescent to gain some understanding from council staff, the mayor, councillors, as to why the Montefiore planning proposal is seemingly being fast-tracked. Now, it arrived on the 26th of May. I'd like to find out why, who, how, and when a 1,000-page document of concern to all in the community, not just those that live in Barons Crescent, could be lodged on the 26th of May, be exhibited on Friday, the 16th of June, 20 days later, and then go before the local planning panel the following Thursday, the 22nd of June. Now, if that's not fast tracking a very technical, big planning proposal, I don't know what is. And I'd like an answer to that tonight. Who's responsible? Why is it necessary? At any stage during these past few weeks, did anyone at council sit back, and I include councillors here, and consider how this might be perceived by the community? Did you hope that we wouldn't notice it in that couple of days going up on the Friday and you've got to put your submission in because everybody's meeting the next week? And that maybe we wouldn't notice? I think it was a disgrace to treat the community with such disdain, and that's what I wrote in my submission to the local planning panel. Many good residents who care about the community got to work to ensure that the panel learned of this behaviour and learned of some of the major consequences if this proposal goes ahead. Thankfully, common sense prevailed. The LPP's findings confirmed this. For those who didn't do their homework, the speakers at this panel presented a plethora of outstanding issues that deserve your further attention. Firstly, let's get some things straight. This is not about aged care. Residential aged care beds are dropping. They're being reduced from 344 to 194. This is not about aging in place, a cute marketing slogan someone invented. This is about Montefiore's changed business model, from provider of aged care to full-on property developer of premium apartments. It will be able-bodied people enjoying those 1, 2, and 3 bedroom premium apartments built for top-end buyers.
Sorry, Ms. Rosen. Moved Councillor Sanderson, extension of time, seconded Councillor Craswell. All those in favour? Against? That is carried.
Great. If this medium density rezoning SP2 seniors housing goes ahead in a low density suburb adjoining sensitive bushland and wildlife areas and allowing up to 8-storey heights, it will predetermine the outcome of the 10-year review of our LEP. Every man and his dog will want to do it. Imagine the consequences, and it might happen near where you live. Given this planning proposal has been labelled phase 1 of a master plan, one can only guess at what other massive development will follow in years to come, and it begs a very good question. Is this land use going to remain or be treated as a charity status? Or will these new apartment owners, 144 I think there are, become a rate-paying enterprise? I hope you can answer that tonight. It's getting to a stage now in Hunters Hill where nowhere is safe to buy without threat of overdevelopment happening on your doorstep. Residents like me struggle to navigate Barons Crescent, pulling over to the side to allow oncoming traffic, trucks and buses. On-street parking has become tight given all the subdivisions you allow and multiple housing, where owners, visitors and deliveries prefer to street park than go down steep driveways or underground car parks. Montefiore looks to add another 288 cars to this mix. These days, traffic reports are not worth the paper they're written on. This is an international company, Urbis, and how they can dare to suggest that thinking people like us will swallow that it'll only create an additional 34 car movements a day is really, it defies logic. These buildings will be lit by night and will create an absolute chaos for our wildlife in nearby Baronia Park bushland and the Great North Walk. Let's be clear, it's not in the public interest to conveniently allow Montefiore the right to upscale and rezone and thus allow others to follow suit. In finishing, What does all this say of council? It's no wonder many find council's processes lacking in integrity and transparency. You don't have to like us, but as public servants or elected representatives of this community, you do have a responsibility to represent us in good faith, consult and inform. We don't know all the processes, but you do, with integrity and transparency, and professionally undertake your duties on our behalf, not your behalf, ours, the residents and ratepayers. I'd now like some answers. As I've said, the charity status is important to know. I'd also like to know why this proposal has been fast-tracked, and you can't deny that. It has. Somebody on staff or somewhere made the decision to receive it, to put it on exhibition for 4 days and get it before the local planning panel. And I think, out of respect, as a ratepayer and resident, I deserve an answer of who that was and why, and who authorised it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rosen. Rosen, sorry, Karen, can I just bring you back to the lectern there? Just before I throw to councillors for questions, you raised a few different questions, one of which was process. We do have our strategic planner on the line, but we are bound by very formal processes that are set out when you lodge formal planning proposals. That process has been followed to the letter, and any suggestions that it was fast-tracked is not technically correct. But I might just throw to
For 4 days. Was that
we haven't even Mrs. Rayson. I might just throw to the strategic planner by the general manager, unless the general manager wants to make some comments about the formal process and
I'd like to hear
and
it.
where to from here.
I think so. Look, I'll let Kieran open.
He works 2 days a week. Come on, you're the
Sorry,
general manager of the council.
Mrs. Rayson, there are protocols
Sorry.
for speakers, and you have to be respectful to
I will. I'm
particularly
sorry.
to the professional staff. You
I
don't
do
always need to be
apologise.
respectful to the councillors, but it would
Yeah.
be nice. But the professional staff are here doing their job, so please be respectful. Mr. Metcalfe.
I'm just interested to know how you actually know the employment engagement of the strategic planner, but that's interesting in itself. So that's an assumption. And we would be appreciative if you could be respectful to staff. They're just doing their job. Over to you, Kieran.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager, and through the General Manager, Mr. Mayor. The public exhibition period formally occurs following a gateway determination, and the consultation period, the exhibition period, is also determined by the department through the state government. So we're currently in a phase of assessing the planning proposal, and that would be packaged together, and a resolution would be sought from the elected council to refer that planning proposal to the Department of Planning and Environment and to the Secretary for assessment, and then once again followed by public exhibition in due course if that's part of the determination. And we're not seeking that resolution. We're not at that stage yet.
I'd answer the question.
Councillors, any questions of Mrs. Rosen? No? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Metcalfe. Thank you.
I'll now call Suzette Zillick. Welcome, Suzette. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Now, let's see if I'm speaking loud. Okay. Good evening. I cannot see how decisions can be made around aged care without having a detailed understanding of the accommodation needs of senior residents within Hunters Hill. Louder? Thank you. As council does not have a social planner or equivalent, Montefiore's community needs assessment report has been based on a desktop analysis and using statewide population trends. Council's own housing strategy puts forward suggestions in the absence of surveying and consulting with its senior residents to understand their needs. Although no two communities are alike, an accommodation choice is based on many factors. Getting to know my senior neighbours reveals that many prefer not to downsize, rather to remain in the homes they've lived in for decades and into aged care only when they have become too frail or ill to live independently. They are likely to require more aged care beds in the future, rather than the larger number of independent living units proposed by Montefiore. As current occupancy figures at the Montefiore site have not been provided, it is difficult to determine if there will be positions available for Hunters Hill's senior residents. Their existing clients and Montefiore's wait list from outside of Hunters Hill may have already filled the quota for the redeveloped site. The details provided in the proposal clearly reveal that the plan is to reconfigure the site by reducing the number of aged care beds and replace them with independent living units without materially adding to the stock of aged care accommodation. Put simply, the reconfiguration of the site is commercially driven, with the aim of maximising the sale of units rather than meeting the needs of senior residents within the Hunters Hill community. 26-metre high towers will provide enhanced commercial outcomes with elevated views across Parkland River and to the city. If the sole benefit of the proposal is to deliver housing diversity rather than increasing housing stock, the question that must be answered is whether there is adequate justification to triple the area's height controls to achieve that housing diversity. It is difficult to see how 26-metre high buildings are compatible with the 1 to 2 story low density character of the surrounding area. The excessive height will require the removal of 222 existing trees with no firm plans for offset. Its prudency questionable given its close proximity to the environmentally sensitive Boronia Park Conservation Area, and no contribution made to rate revenue and drainage infrastructure to address the impacts of increased stormwater runoff. This height will also impact the residents of Montefiore, where 76% will receive a minimum of 2 hours of solar access and close to 14% will receive.
Sorry, this is it. Extension of time of Councillor Sanderson, seconded Councillor Crassoy. All those in favour? Against? That is carried.
Close to 14% of residents will receive no natural sunlight. Surely the site can be redeveloped in a more sensitive way that does not result in excessively breaching existing height controls. Controlling height limits will remove the need for special purpose zoning that provides for exceptional planning treatment. It is important to note that this planning proposal is only phase 1 of a master plan for the site. As such, special zoning treatment should not be granted ahead of understanding the entire master plan for the site, including all future phases. In no way do I intend to diminish the importance of aged care, but it is not considered essential infrastructure such as hospitals and schools. The land use is of a residential nature, and the site does not have any special characteristics different to other aged care facilities within and outside of Hunters Hill that are zoned residential, including Montefiore's own Randwick site. The site should be subject to the same planning rigour as any other large residential development and to ensure it remains consistent with future planning for the surrounding residential area. To summarise, the proposal as presented does not benefit Hunters Hill residents with any significant additional aged care beds, requests special zoning be granted without any context for future phases of development, and considerably impacts Hunters Hill's character and conservation objectives. The proposal only benefits new residents from outside of Hunters Hill willing to purchase the independent living units. Whilst I recognise the site needs renewal, the proposal must be carefully scrutinised to ensure Montefiore's planning objectives are not achieved at the expense of local residents and the area's character and heritage. This could include limiting building heights to reduce visual impacts, retaining a residential zoning, and providing more aged care beds to meet the future needs of Hunters Hill's elderly. In order to achieve an acceptable proposal for all stakeholders, it requires more genuine, timely, and effective engagement with the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzette. Councillors, any questions? If not, thank you. I'll now call our last speaker, Mrs. Kate Russell. Russell, you have 3 minutes.
I probably won't need 3 minutes because many of the things I wanted to say have already been said. But I just want to start with recommendation D in council's report, in this report that you've received, says that council receive and note the recommendations of the LPP from June 22. Well, actually, council needs to adopt the resolutions of the expert independent strategic planning panel, not just note them. This proposal, as we've just discussed, will have an enormous impact on the whole municipality. I won't go into all of that because it's been very well covered. It's a precedent and it will have permanent impact. And I guess the other thing that we've also discussed already, but it's a major development, but only the most immediate neighbours have received Montefiore's promotional brochures. Concerned residents have been seeking information and details and really anxious to be part of a discussion to find a solution that we will all be happy to live with. Most people at the moment are actually, most of the community, unaware of what's happening and what's at stake. Well, obviously, 4-storey buildings close to the boundary of Barons Crescent would destroy the streetscape. That's obvious. 2-storey buildings with wider setbacks are proposed for Gaza Avenue because the developer knows that residents' quality of life and the character of the street should and can be respected. This is also required on Barons Crescent. Just in terms of the actual documents that we've been looking at, there are inconsistencies. On one page, we read that residential aged care beds would be reduced by 126 beds. On the next page, we read they'll be reduced by 140 beds, which is correct. We do know that the new Montefiore will have many fewer residential aged care beds for people who are very unwell, and instead it will have 144 apartments for independent living, a very different group of people. There are other inconsistencies. One page shows 35 metres between the building line of Barons, 64 Barons and Building A. Another page shows 36 metres, so which is correct. The report also claims that the development will comply with the standards set in the Greater Sydney Plan, contextually aligned with nearby residential neighbourhood. Well, no. Respect the desired low density character of the area. It shows no such respect. Accessible to existing.
Sorry, we moved extension of time, seconded Councillor Preston. All those in favour? Against, that is.
Sorry, I didn't realise I'd be too talkative. Anyway, accessible to existing cultural, health, transport and social infrastructure. Well, this is a quiet residential area at the end of 2 cul-de-sacs. That's not correct. Also, housing at affordable price points. That gets a tick. Well, the equivalent apartments at Montefiore's Randwick site cost 1.65 million to 2.5 million. Not exactly affordable. So in conclusion, I'd just like to say the scheme needs to truly comply with the Greater Sydney Region Plan, to be contextually aligned with the nearby residential neighbourhood, low density and affordable.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Russell. Councillors, is there any questions of Mr. Russell? If not, Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move an alternative motion.
Yes, I believe you said that through earlier, Councillor Sanderson. I might just pull that up on the screen for the benefit of the councillors. And thank you for sending it through prior. Makes things a little more streamlined. Councillor, you may. Is there a seconder to the motion that's on the screen?
I believe Councillor Williams will.
If you could read the motion.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, there is, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Williams.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Sanderson, if you could read your motion.
Good. It's a fairly long motion, and I will insert a word in reading it. The motion is that 1, Council adopt all resolutions of the local planning panel, LPP, at item 3.2, of the panel's meeting of 22 June 2023, comma. Then I'd like to insert the word including, which is not in the text that was sent through, including that preliminary analysis of the technical reports is required. Adequate time for assessment of the proposal by the local planning panel is needed. There is a need for contextual understanding of the impacts of similar aged care sites within the municipality. A conservation plan to assess the whole site, including the garden and the synagogue, be prepared by an independent heritage expert, and the panel recommend wider community consultation prior to the gateway determination, including providing information on the process of a planning proposal and the gateway determination. 2, council engage an independent strategic planner to review the planning proposal and its assessment as per the resolutions of the LPP and in terms of the strategic merit of the proposal. 3, council recommend key criteria for future voluntary planning agreement, VPA, with Montefiore, including but not limited to A, all costs of necessary infrastructure to support the proposed development, B, the future costs associated with maintaining infrastructure for the proposed development, and C, Montefiore undertaking to council that neither Montefiore nor future occupants of any and all proposed independent living units will seek exemption from payment of council rates. 4, following receipt of A, the independent strategic planners review and recommendations, and B, the council recommendations concerning the key criteria for the future VPA, and to satisfy council resolution 249/22, council conduct a public meeting to consult with community, giving 28 days notice. 5, the results of steps 2, 3, and 4 above be reported to council for its consideration at a council meeting prior to referral for gateway determination. And 6, referral of the planning proposal for gateway determination be deferred to a date following completion of steps 2 to 5 above.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Do you wish to speak to the motion? You have a seconder in Councillor Williams.
Yes, good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a lot of work being gone into this motion, and I think it's absolutely essential, given what the speakers tonight have spoken about. The first point being that a council must adopt the recommendations of the planning panel. That's our expert panel. I'm sure, given the time they took in coming to their conclusions, they had the resources of council staff to advise them, and I believe they've advised council well, and I think we're obliged to accept that advice. In terms of the second point of the motion, that there should be an independent strategic planner to review the planning proposal and its assessment as per the resolution of the LPP and in terms of strategic merit of the proposal. I mean, there's been a lot of points raised this evening by our speakers that there are points about the strategic merit of the proposal that do definitely come into question. I also have concerns about our initial assessment of the proposal. One of the things in particular that concern me, and this is just pulling one out, is that this is a planning proposal. It's not a development application. It has been, I guess, promoted on the basis of some sketches and things that Montefiore have prepared. The difficulty I have with that is that a lot of the controls that are proposed in the planning proposal, I mean, planning proposals are about changing the controls of council, they're not about DAs, provide far greater scope for development than has appeared in the documents that have been distributed. As has been noted by some of our speakers, a height limit of 26 metres will provide far more than, or can provide significantly more than 6 stories. Potentially 18 metres is proposed around the boundaries, or in fact over most of the site, can provide in excess of 4 stories. The other thing, a floor space ratio of 1 can provide significantly denser development than has been presented in some of the material that has been on display. I think the proposal needs greater scrutiny in that area, and that's why a review is required. Moving on to 3. I mean, we'll have a discussion later tonight about council's financial position. I think it's leaving it too late in the scheme of things to be talking about voluntary planning proposals after we've already granted a planning proposal. We need to be considering the issues that are posed in point 3. What are we? What are the costs of infrastructure? What will be the costs of maintaining it? Will we be able to rate these independent living units that we're hearing from some of our speakers are effectively luxury dwellings? It would seem quite incorrect to me that if there isn't any prospect that because a development has been prepared by an organisation which is a charitable organisation, that it is able to have arrangements to have their units occupied by people who really are not in need of aged care, and then to cap it off for those units to be non-rateable. One of our problems in financing this council is that only 41% of our land is rateable. We can't afford that to be eroded any further. So the VPA side of it is quite important. Then the motion goes on to set out how we deal with this ongoing process. And 4 suggests that following receipt of the Independent Strategic Planners Review and Council's recommendations concerning the criteria for a VPA, that then at that stage we have that information before us, that will be the appropriate time, giving reasonable notice to hold a public meeting. And public meetings in these situations are incredibly important because the legislation does not appear particularly complex. The way it's been layered, the planning proposal process is quite complex and difficult for many to comprehend. I did note the other day that when it was introduced in 2008, I believe it was by then Planning Minister Frank Sartor, a relatively new member of Parliament at that stage, the Honourable Rob Stokes, or Honourable Dr. Rob Stokes, at that time criticised it for being unnecessarily complex, and I believe he was absolutely right. So the educational side of the community to equip them to deal with the process is incredibly important. Then the point 6 of the resolution or the motion is to simply to make clear that council will not forward the planning proposal to Gateway until we've gone through all of this other process, which I believe is absolutely essential.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Any speakers against? For the motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the residents that have spoken this evening. I think they've put it very articulately and very on a very high level the concerns which the community have, and I share those concerns because I think that something as major and as important as this planning proposal needs to be dealt with in a timely manner, not to be hurried along. We need to engage with the community and provide the community with the information and help them understand the process, along with councillors. I must admit that I was absolutely astounded that I was only given 3 or 4 days to read 1,000 pages or more on a very complex issue. Same with the planning, local planning panel. I do reiterate the questions asked by the residents in the gallery. What is the hurry? We have 90 days to deal with this matter. That's 3 months. And if you look at what the original recommendation in the planning officer's report to the local planning panel, it was a recommendation to proceed, not one to consult. And I haven't heard except for the mayor saying that we will, in any of the documentation that process will be honoured, our resolution of the previous discussion. So to me, the whole process is flawed. I think how a planning officer in a matter of weeks could produce 1,000 pages of complex analysis leaves me wondering, let alone how I can absorb it and the community absorb it in the time frame given to us. And I think the planning panel has again shown up lack of transparency and the inability of council, the farce where council put up a proposal which the local planning panel clearly identified as being not in the public interest. You, Mr. Mayor, then took a review to the planning panel on the same basis, only again to be told.
Williams, I might just ask that you stick to the issue at hand, which is the Montefiore motion.
Well, I am. I'm speaking to the process which we've got.
You are also in the low bandwidth areas. You are cutting out every now and again, so not sure if you can do anything about that.
Okay, well, I'll cut to the chase. Yeah, I support what the motion that's been put. I understand that has community understanding and support. I think the current proposal, for all the reasons that have been mentioned tonight, fails, and it will create a precedent and doesn't deliver the housing outcomes that we need in Hunters Hill. So having said that, I think it's important that the residents be given the time and the opportunity. Councillor Sanderson's gone through some of the more technical discussion, and I endorse the proposed amendment 100%.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any speakers against the motion? For the motion? Councillor Cresswell for the motion.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I actually do believe that the report and recommendation from the council officer does actually cover a lot of what Councillor Sanderson's amended motion does. I just think that Councillor Sanderson's wording is a little more compassionate and empathetic to the community in the way it's worded. Now, that's no reflection on the council officer or the general manager at all. I don't mean it in that way. I just know this community, and I think they need our assurance that these things will all be addressed. And I largely think that they all were going to be addressed in the report and its recommendations. It's just that what we've heard tonight from our community and my kind of gut feeling in watching the planning panel meeting was that we just needed to assure everyone a little more with the wording. So I actually don't think it varies much from what's already being recommended. And I think that everything that's being recommended will be pursued. I know that we do have to respond to the proposal, and we don't have a great deal of time to do that. And I rely on our technical experts to make sure that we get all of our questions and queries across in time before we're in a little strife with it. So I just think we need to press on and just change the wording to just give everyone a bit of peace of mind.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against? Councillor Vergara.
I just want to ask a question
Yes.
through you, Mr. Mayor, probably to the director. So we've had 30 days pass already.
Yes.
The the proposal calls for 28 days notice. That's 2/3 of the 90-day period. And the question is it right that if we don't make a decision within the 90-day period, the proponent can go straight to the department and the department can make a decision to proceed to Gateway, and the process for that determination has no consultation or involvement of the community whatsoever? Is that right? Is that what we are at risk here?
General Manager.
Well, first of all, I'll get Kieran to clarify that, but just before we do that, I want to just make a couple of quick comments. First of all, thank you to everyone for your feedback. It's most appreciated, and that's what we're here for, is to listen. The 3 points I want to make is this, is that let's keep in mind that when the first proposal came in from Montefiore, staff actually rejected it. But I don't think that we should forget that. So we're taking this proposal very, very seriously. Secondly, I think we need to respectfully not get too far ahead of ourselves here. The staff in no shape or form are recommending Gateway here. We're not. In fact, what we're saying is that we actually need to assess and analyse this much more, which is essentially what you're saying. And thirdly, and I will pick up on Dr. Sharp's comments, is that I've seen a couple of emails today that have been slightly concerning and disappointing, saying that council has made the decision not to hold the community meeting and that Urbis and Montefiore had pulled out of that situation. Now, that is 200% false. Montefiore's and Urbis all along have said that at the right time, prior to Gateway determination decision being made, which is not what the staff is recommending tonight, that they will attend that meeting at the appropriate time. Council's never stood back from that, never have, never will. But Kieran, I would go to your subject matter expertise. You live and breathe this every single day. I'm not a planner, you are. In regards to just confirming Councillor Vergara's question pertaining to the time limits and the particular question about that if they took the option to go to review, there would be no consultation, it would be taken out of our hands.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Yeah, just confirming that there would be an opportunity for the applicant to go through the review process, which would go through to the Department of Planning and Environment in the instance that that the proposal is not progressed. So certainly there are timeframes under the LEP making guidelines. There are targets that we would seek to achieve, and there's certainly an opportunity for the applicant to take an alternative approach if council chooses to reject the proposal or in fact not to progress the proposal. So that is correct.
Hey, Councillor Vergara, did you have any other questions?
No question, but I'll speak against the motion on this basis, that I'm concerned if this framework is followed, we'll miss the 90 days and then miss the opportunity if the proponent goes straight to the department for any form of consultation. At the right time or the wrong time, any form will just be taken away from us. I reiterate what the General Manager says. I understand this to be not a proposal to proceed to Gateway, but to say, let's do more work, and then to come back with a recommendation to proceed to Gateway or not. And then at that point, I would like council to say, on this recommendation, this is what we recommend, read consultation. We do it now, we do it at 10 places. So I think the processes provided by the instrument and the regulations provides predictability in decision-making. It provides the right amount of consultation, and all the issues are great. I accept them, but that's the merits of the application. We're not at that point yet. So I think the process is the process. I think it's right. And I'm concerned that if we take this well-intended course, it'll actually be more detrimental and jeopardise the prospect of these views being heard in a way that council and the department are required by law to take account of.
Thank you, Councillor Vergara. Any speakers for the motion? Question, Councillor Preston.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if this could be directed at Kieran for you, Mr. Mayor, and I don't know if he'll know the answer to this question, but taking Councillor Sanderson's motion and comparing it to what has been recommended in the report to council tonight, is there a substantive difference aside from there's a little bit more detail in Councillor Sanderson's proposed amendment. Or does someone else maybe want to answer that?
General Manager.
Is the intention the same as what I'm?
Sorry, just substantially, the intention of Councillor Sanderson's motion is what is in the body of the report. They're very similar. There are some more onerous VPA instructions. And now whether or not we should be negotiating a VPA at this point is something for the strategic planners more so than for me. But I would imagine that we are giving probably a bit more direction over and above what is in the body of the report. But the intention, as I read it, is very, very similar. That they would give the same result.
So can I ask just a follow-up?
General Manager.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, the only premise I'd put on that, Councillor Preston, is that literally Kieran has only just seen the amendment, so that might be difficult for him. My apologies, I didn't mention this earlier too. The other thing that is important to note is that at the given time of the decision for Gateway, that comes to full council. Just to be clear for our residents, the local planning panel theoretically is an advisory panel here. They are not a decision-making panel in this instance. Now, Kieran, it's at your discretion here whether you want to respond to Councillor Preston's question, and respectfully, you've only just seen the amendment tonight from Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, General Manager. Just through you to the councillor, the recommendation is that the proposal not proceed through to through the state government, and that council not seek gateway determination in effect. So we're actually seeking to undertake further assessment, undertake further work, and really build further information around this proposal prior to providing the proposal back to council for further consideration, and any future referral to Gateway and subsequent public exhibition and the other steps in the planning proposal process. So it's very much the intent of the recommendation is to undertake that further work.
So just to follow up.
Councillor Preston.
So all we're doing tonight is, if the recommendation is taken as it is, or if Councillor Sanderson's amendment is accepted, frankly, all we're doing is proceeding with further analysis and review of a proposal that's been brought to us by Montefiore following a rejection of their initial proposal. So technically, after their initial proposal, could they have just gone directly to the Department of Planning on the basis of our rejections? Or is that only something that can happen now if we were to reject their proposal again and not undertake a review?
Sorry, just
But
Well, there is no decision being
But didn't
prepared.
we already reject? Isn't that what
we
someone
didn't
said?
we didn't accept the
No, we
original.
didn't actually accept their actual proposal, and they lodged it, we rejected.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that wasn't a decision in any shape or form around going to Gateway. It was just the so Mr. Mayor, to add to Councillor Preston's question, it's respectfully my place to talk to Councillor Sanderson's motion, and I mean that amended motion, and I mean that respectfully. But I will make comment to the council officer's report that part B of the recommendation is very clear, that we continue to do a detailed assessment and see that it comes back to council for consideration.
And just to be clear on process and the similarities, any gateway determination would have to be formally brought to council as a report for acceptance or rejection, following a statutory public consultation period that is very well set out in the departments in the legislation around public consultation when it comes to gateways. That would then come to council again at the end of the public consultation with a final determination of acceptance or rejection, or approval or rejection.
And at that point, Mr. Mayor, is that when we would consider the actual merits pros and cons of the proposal.
Following the consultation, yes,
Following the
with
consultation
the benefit of all the consultation from the community.
So that's when we can argue with Montefiore's proposal as to height, as to
That's when we
volume.
accept or
as to-
reject.
Yes.
Mm.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Councillors, any other questions?
Yes,
Councillor
Mr. Mayor. Look, I've just got a question, if I may, regarding the clause in Councillor Sanderson's motion regarding rates. My understanding is that that is not council's prerogative to direct or not whether a property pays rates. It's simply based on how the organisation that is the owner of the property is determined under the Local Government Act, whether they pay rates or not. Could I just ask, perhaps, Kieran, if you could answer that, or someone?
I think it would be, it would probably be the Maria through the General Manager, but I agree with you, Councillor Quinn, that there is probably some question there as to whether or not a property is rateable if it's not sold as a stratum, because technically, as a faith organisation, Montefiore is not rateable at the moment. So I would imagine that if they are retirement living and not sold as stratas under a stratum, then I can't imagine that council could levy rates on them. And equally, given that we are capped, it would not have a huge effect on our rates revenue. Sorry, General Manager.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, Councillor Quinn, at the next, given that it's a question sort of without notice tonight, generally we can bring you a specific paper on that at the next briefing session, but it's very clear in the Act what is exempt from rates, as you would be aware of, and what isn't. And at the moment, they're a charitable organisation. So we could bring you a briefing paper on that at the next briefing session.
Thank you.
Councillors, any other speakers against the motion? For the motion? Right of reply, Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's probably not a lot more that I can say. I've been through the motion, but I am deeply concerned that we need to have the opportunity to question many aspects of this proposal, and the sooner we start that questioning, the better. It's definitely not about stopping the development, and I think all the residents around accept that something will happen. They just want to be heard about things that impacts on them.
Yeah.
And as has been said, it's an incredibly environmentally sensitive area. I don't know how many people have done it, but one of the points I made the other day is I've paddled a kayak up that river dozens of times. And when I've taken people that don't know the area, they're absolutely astounded to see the environment that is so close to the centre of the biggest city, or what is currently the biggest city in the country, while about to be overtaken. It is, that area is just a treasure. In our discussions about the LEP and DCP review, there have been suggestions that we should consider rezoning some of that area as C4, environmental living. And that's a course that Mossman has taken in a number of their areas. This is a very special part of Hunters Hill. And I think we have to be very cautious about how we go about the handling, the possible development of buildings up to 8 stories of plans as it currently planned. This planning proposal is incredibly important. It's also been mentioned by a number of our speakers about the potential for the precedent that it will set, and the possibility that once this happens in one of our aged care centres, then it will be expected by all. I think we've got to handle this matter with great care, and I made those points the other day. And there has been a lot of criticism of the gateway process, I advocate the all the caution, and I wouldn't wish anything that is in the motion to prevent us meeting any deadlines, but I don't see that it should. We just need to get on with this expeditiously and do so with our ears well and truly open.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. I will put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
I'll do that again, sorry. All those in favour?
Aye.
And an abstention from Councillor Quinn? Sorry, Councillor, I can't hear you.
You're on mute, Councillor Quinn.
Sorry, no, look, I was going to foreshadow the recommendation as in the business paper, Mr. Mayor, so I'll vote against it as it is.
Yes, that is, that motion is lost. We have a motion as recommended in the paper, councillors. Councillor Vergara, seconded. Councillor Crassoy. Any discussion, Councillor Vergara?
I'll say again, this motion is to do further work. It's important, from what I read of the legislation, that the feedback we get tonight, that we as the PPA and the department are required to listen to that. The legislation says that council is not the authority until a decision is made at the gateway. That means everything said tonight, everything said before that point in time is not legally required to be heard by anyone. So if we want people to be heard, we have to do it in a particular way. Unfortunately, that's the process. So I'm concerned to ensure that people are heard, not just heard, but that their opinions are required to be taken into consideration. For example, any feedback now, council could not compel the proponent to address or respond to it. They could just say, you know, one of those two. It's at the point where we become the PPA that the proponent is required legally to address the concerns raised through community consultation. To me, that is the key. There's no point banging at the door now and the proponent has no obligation to listen. It can just go, screw you, make a decision, and then I'm going to have it reviewed. I want the proponent to hear this feedback. I want the proponent to be legally required to respond to it and address it. And that's why I'm saying that this process has to be followed in this way.
Thank you, Councillor Vergara. Any speakers against? Paul? Councillor Crassoy.
I'm standing up to speak for it because it seems a little contradictory that I supported the last amended motion. But at the end of the day, what I support is the process, and I believe that the officer's report and the recommendation to council is to continue to question all of the elements as outlined in the report. I think that the General Manager has heard from the community tonight, and with the amended motion that Councillor Sanderson proposed, and with the recommendations of the planning panel that we really did only get late last week, that all of those considerations will come into play during these recommendations in the report that's in the business paper. So I am not concerned, and the community that did bother to stick around to participate in the whole process, thank you. I'm not concerned that their questions and concerns won't be addressed, because there will be, and there's plenty of opportunity for real community consultation. And thank you for your expert legal advice on this, Councillor Vergara, and opportunity for it to go to community consultation and to come back to council for us to be at the table. I was a new councillor when we were going through the gateway process with the Gladesville development, and it was horrible. And the community were so against council and fighting us when we as a council were fighting so hard to get actually also against the gateway process to get better outcomes for Gladesville. It's important that the community work with their councillors as we approach this gateway process, and that we get a good outcome for the site and for Hunters Hill. So thank you to the officer for the report, and I hope we can move forward expeditiously.
Thank you, Councillor Crassoy. Any speakers again for the motion, against the motion? Councillor Quinn.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'll just speak for it. I do acknowledge all of the issues that Councillor Sanderson put in his amended motion. I have a little concern about a couple of fine points in that motion. However, I am satisfied that the recommendation that's been put to us here in this motion is going to cover all of the issues raised by Councillor Sanderson. I did not have time to consider his amended motion, given the time frame that I'm in at the moment, and it was only sent an hour and a half before the meeting. So therefore, I kind of had my head around the recommendation as it was presented to council in the business paper.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Any other speakers against the motion? Councillor.
Yes,
Councillor Williams. Sorry.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I think the motion that Councillor Sanderson and myself put forward was one that was designed to be inclusive, to make sure that the community did know the path which it would be involved in. It by no way would have delayed or jeopardised the outcome of the planning proposal consideration by council. There's time to do it in that fashion. I do still have grave concerns about some aspects of the report which was provided in terms of its relevance and applicability to Hunters Hill. And I do note that the report that went to the planning panel was to proceed to Gateway, to recommend to council to proceed to Gateway. So we seem to need some clearer direction as to how we should move forward. We've heard clearly from the community tonight that they don't feel part of the process. I haven't heard anything out of the motion on the floor that will provide that level of certainty and transparency for the community. So I can't support this approach. It's not the same approach which was put forward by Councillor Sanderson and myself as portrayed during the debate. They are separate and they are very clearly defining paths. And I think the previous motion clearly defined a path that was inclusive for the community. The motion at the moment on the table has no clarity around that area, so I can't support it.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Just, Mr. Mayor,
Question, clarification, Councillor Krasawoy.
Thank you. I had a look at the report that went to the planning panel and I understood it to not be a recommendation to move straight to that council go to Gateway. Was it written differently to the report that we have here?
I'd have to go through the general manager or our planning consultant.
Well, that's one for Kieran, Mr. Mayor. Here's the author.
Sorry, Kieran.
Yeah. So it's
Yes,
changed.
thank you.
Council report.
Yeah.
It's not in the council report.
Mr. Metcalf.
Yeah, just through you, the general manager. Thank you. Yes, the recommendation is not to proceed to Gateway. There has been obviously a fair bit of assessment. This process has been going on for many months now, and as we mentioned before, has gone through one rejection process already, a substantial amount of assessment, and there's still clearly the need for further information and further work to be done. And the local planning panel has provided advice to council staff, obviously, and which is being provided to the council for consideration. And we're certainly looking to go ahead and undertake further assessment and understand further detail around the proposal prior to reporting the matter back to council again. So absolutely, the advice provided by the local planning panel has been taken into consideration, obviously presented to council tonight. So that's informed the recommendations put before council.
Thank you, Mr. Metcalf. Councillor.
Just to clarify.
Yes, sorry, Councillor Cresswell.
There has not been a recommendation to proceed to Gateway.
Not as yet.
Thank you.
Councillors, any other speakers for? Against? Councillor Sanderson?
Well, I was actually going to propose a very minor amendment, and that be in point D of the recommendation, which currently reads that council receive and note the recommendations of the local planning panel. I would suggest that we amend that to read the council receive, note and adopt the recommendations of the local planning panel.
Councillors, is there a seconder to that amendment? I just note that as the as the local planning panel is not the statutory body that actually recommends these things. They're advisory in this role because it's a planning panel. That council is the ultimate determining authority. Then we're not actually adopting recommendations. We would be seeking advice. But councillors, is there a seconder? No. If not, that lapses. Councillors, any other speakers for? Councillor Prieston.
I'd actually like to propose an amendment.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Councillor Prieston.
I think that it would be prudent, given what we've heard tonight from some members of the community and in light of the importance of producing the opportunity for community consultation in every decision-making kind of element of council. So I'd like to propose that we insert a new E.
Sorry, councillor, could I just pull up the recommendation? Add a point E.
Yes, please. That says subject to be and should council consider the Montefiore planning proposal to have strategic and site specific merit.
Site specific, sorry. Site specific merit.
A community consultation meeting be held at the commencement of the public exhibition and assessment phase
Thank you, councillor. Is that it, councillor?
Yeah.
Yes, would you like to speak to your amendment? Is the amendment accepted by the mover and seconder? No.
Yeah, it is, because I yes, it's accepted.
Yes.
I can explain
Yeah,
why.
councillor Crassoy, is the amendment accepted? Because then we'll.
The seconder, yeah, okay.
Yes, okay, well, that becomes the motion, but you can speak to the new point of the motion.
I just think we've been a bit bogged down this evening in the detail. I think that just going back to basics, the recommendation in the report that was brought tonight is for council to do and undertake extra work to assess the merit of this proposal. I think that to include this new subparagraph E is to ensure and is to make the community feel comfortable that there will be ample public consultation ahead of any gateway decision, and that they feel confident in council's ability to assess and council's staff and experts to assess the proposal as brought by Montefiore. I think that we can deal with things like the VPA, for example. Like, I do think that that's a good idea, and it's not that I agree with everything that's in the Montefiore proposal by any means, but I think that we can deal with those elements at a later stage, and that this meeting is this report and this recommendation is purely to commence to further assessment phase, which I think is prudent and I think it's important.
Thank you, councillor Prieston. I think a VPA is not just a good idea, I think it's absolutely necessary. Councillors, any other discussion? Yes, councillor Crassoy.
It's just a little question around it, because I know how our community feel. And at the moment it says at the beginning of the assessment phase, and I would like the community to have time to consider, like if it goes on public exhibition, I would like the community to have at least a couple of weeks to consider it.
Perhaps as soon as practicable.
Yeah. With, I don't know, it's yours.
I'm happy with that.
Within
3 weeks of
Yeah,
the beginning of.
Sorry,
I just want the
councillors.
community to have time to consider
Yes,
the-
sorry.
I take your
Councillors, Councillor Prieston, unfortunately, because it was accepted and adopted, it's not your amendment because it has become the motion. Councillor Vergara has heard the question or feedback from Councillor Crasso. Would it be your intention to amend the wording slightly from the beginning to something else, or?
Maybe just add at the end of where you've got phase, providing community with at least 2 weeks notice or 3 weeks.
Because the thing is, you've got a certain amount of time on public exhibition, so you want to get everyone's feedback with enough time for it to be digested.
I need some direction here, councillors, from you on the motion.
With adequate notice.
With adequate notice.
To consult.
Are you comfortable, Councillor Vergara, with adequate notice?
Yep. Sorry.
Councillor Crasso, are you comfortable with that? Yes. Councillors, that is the motion that is on the table.
Notice to who they're aiming, but that's clear.
Community.
Well, it doesn't say that.
To the community.
To the community, councillors, are you comfortable? We're moving into a little bit too lax. Councillor Sanderson, have you got a question?
No, I haven't spoken about the motion on the table now.
Okay. Speakers.
You spoke against it. I think we're.
You spoke. Yeah, you have spoken against this motion.
No, I haven't. I've spoken in favour of mine, and I suggested an amendment to this one, which you rejected.
Okay, no, fair enough. Councillors, any other speakers for, against? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm very disappointed. I mean, the Gateway process has been criticised from its inception. It's as I alluded to earlier, it was criticised quite heavily by probably the most capable planning minister this state has seen in recent times, in the Honourable Dr. Rob Stokes. One of the things that occurred in the LEP process, making process earlier in its history, that originally there was 2 stages of consultation about the drafting, then consultation about acceptance of the final drafting. That all went out the window as successive governments have tried to narrow community debate on this kind of policy. I find this exceptionally disappointing, and as a community council and as a member of a small council, I believe we should be listening carefully to community. I'm very disappointed tonight we've gone in a different direction. The community really needs to be heard, listened to, heard and taken notice of. We speak about the different stages of consultation, but in this area, the community needs to be very much part of the process. And regrettably, successive state governments have chosen to shut community out. And I'm disappointed that we can't do a little bit more to include community in this process.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Any other speakers for? Against? Right from reply, Councillor Vergara.
Yeah. So I just did a Google search of Rob Stokes and criticism of the planning proposal. Nothing comes up. The local environmental plan making guideline provides a step-by-step guide to the process and identifies the roles and responsibilities. I encourage everyone to go to that. It sets out the process very clearly. It indicates that the planning process needs to look to the future as well as current needs. It needs to be led by long-term and evidence-based decisions, not speculation and emotion, and it needs to have a predictability to decision-making process, both for the proponent and the community. The local environmental plan making guideline and the EP&A Act sets out the process and provides for those objectives to be met. Both the Act and the guideline indicate that the most appropriate for time that they do provide for community consultation, Absolutely. And it indicates that the most appropriate time for consultation for planning proposals is after a gateway determination is issued and all relevant studies and reports have been completed. It says this ensures the community has clear and evidence-based information available to help them make informed comments on the proposal. So again, having the community make informed comments that the department and council can take into account and require the proponent to address, to me seems the best way to get an outcome which the community accepts as appropriate. Otherwise, we're going to just be going around speculation. And my fear, as I said, is that the proponent will get sick of it and shut the community out of the process altogether through a review process. That is the outcome I do not want. So I'm supporting this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Pagaro. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Councillors, I'll move to item 4.1, 2023-2024 Hunters Hill Council Operational Plan and Budget. We have a speaker to this item, Dr. Alastair Sharp. Dr. Sharp, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, tonight I'm speaking for Hunters Hill Trust. We've perused the draft operating plan and associated documents and have concerns about several aspects. Primarily, we're concerned about council's long-term sustainability. Unless Hunters Hill has a plan to balance its budget, it can't survive as an independent entity and eventually will probably be forcibly amalgamated with a neighbouring council. Currently, it seems that the operating plan allows for a deficit for the next 10 years. I don't see how that is survivable. So what can be done? We certainly oppose any short-term solutions to what is a long-term problem. We're worried about the possible sale of council assets as a short-term solution, or development proposals that don't result in a continuing income stream, such as redevelopment on land that doesn't pay rates. Previously, we've opposed, without success, gifting 1.7 million, I think it was, to a sporting club for construction of the Bronia Park facilities, in spite of council having resolved not to contribute other than in kind. Now, that was 1.7 million out of reserves of 10 million. So there's the first part gone. We'll continue to oppose such overly generous gifts. But more positively, the Trust will continue to oppose concessions made to developers in return for one-off payments. That's why we mentioned continuing benefit. We support council subsidising the operations of non-commercial community-based organisations by means of offering lower fees, for example, to participate in Mukabula Festival. We need that. That needs to be sustainable. We ask council to critically review relationships with the many rates exempt organisations in Hunters Hill. I found on the web, on the internet, that Deloitte reviewed the subject in a report to local government published 10 years ago of how council could handle this difficult subject of being exempt from paying rates. 10 years old, but it still seemed to be a very relevant thing, and being funded by local government, I hope that you are all familiar with this document. It's easily available. We suggest that council engage continually with the community to establish and, when necessary, review priorities for...
Sorry, Dr. Sharp. Councillor, is there an extension of time? Councillor Sanderson, seconded Councillor Crassoy. All those in favour? Against? That is carried.
So we suggest that council engage continually with the community, not just on the odd occasion, to establish, and where necessary, review priorities for expenditure, reporting in plain speak to each council meeting. This isn't new either. It's covered in council's community engagement strategy. And finally, We think that public engagement before making financial commitments would help to avoid situations as the apparently unnecessary demolition of 48 Gladesville Road to make an entry to Victory Park, which is costing council, I don't know, $20,000 or $30,000 a year. It looks as though council's on a road to nowhere. It just, I despair. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Councillors, any questions of Dr. Sharp?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Quinn.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I could ask Dr. Sharp, so you just mentioned that you were speaking on behalf of the Hunters Hill Trust. Can you tell us as councillors what process the trust has been through to adopt this position? So has it been a meeting of the trust executive and an adopted resolution of the trust to come back to council with this feedback? I'd appreciate your advice on the process that the trust has followed to adopt this position.
It's the view of the executive. It hasn't been discussed by a general meeting of members.
Could you advise us, please, who are the executive of the trust?
No.
Oh, I thought that was generally available.
No, I'm not aware, sorry.
Oh, okay, okay. If you come to our AGM, I will introduce both the previous ones and the new ones.
Thank you.
Members of the committee, okay. Bridget Dowsett, Maureen Flowers. This is difficult.
You're getting some hints from the gallery. Lucy.
Yeah, Lucy Cray. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm not coping very well with this sort of questioning.
That's okay, Dr. Sharp. We'll refer to the trust website. Yes.
I'll check the website. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Any other questions of Dr. Sharp? And Dr. Sharp, I have a question. You're providing feedback about how we shouldn't be raising revenue. What's the trust's view on how we do raise revenue? Because you've given us several examples here of what you don't support. What do you support council doing to raise revenue?
Well, your normal method is through rates.
Increase rates, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
And I don't know why you're asking me the question of how you raise revenue.
Oh no, I'm just you provided feedback that you think
Well,
that we're on a road.
the normal way.
Sorry, Dr. Sharp. I keep calling you Councillor Sharp because you spend so much time in the chamber. You've given us feedback about what you don't want to see in terms of revenue, and you said that we are on a road to nowhere. What are the trust's suggestions, rather than your criticisms of how to raise revenue apart from increased rates?
Well, I mentioned that we don't want one-off payments. We want to look for continuing payments. For example, the property at 48 Gladesville Road was presumably producing you with a continual income stream. When you're talking about developments, you should be looking for a continuing income stream rather than simply a payment for a particular benefit. But I'm really not an expert on how council's income works, so I would refer that to your general manager.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sharp. Councillor Preston.
Just one more question on the back of that. Thank you, Dr. Sharp. So something like the Baronia Park clubhouse facility would be something that.
Well, that's the business case for that says it's going to cost council, was it 80,000 a year or 8,000 a year or something? That's going to run at a loss. That requires continuing subsidy.
That's
approval.
Sorry. That's assuming no income from leasing.
No, that was the business case on which it was based.
Councillors, any further questions of Dr. Sharp? Thank you, Dr. Sharp.
Thank you.
Councillors, we have a recommendation on page 10 of the business papers. We've got a mover. Move Councillor Crassoy, seconded Councillor Quinn. Sorry, I'll keep referring to the screens. You're a little bit small on my screen. Councillor Crasswell, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mr Mayor, and thanks to the council officers for the report, and thank you to the community for their considered feedback during the public exhibition process. And seeing as we've held the staff here long enough tonight, I think I'll save my comments at that.
Thank you, Councillor Crasswell. Any other discussion, councillors? Any speakers against the motion? Councillor Williams.
Yes. Yes, Mr Mayor. As I've said in the previous discussion around this before it went on exhibition, I raised concerns which I think have been shadowed by the Hunters Hill Trust, that there's no strategic direction within the budget as to how we're to return to a sustainable financial position. The previous two councils spent a lot of time and a lot of energy to work towards that goal, to repair the deficit. And then they got to the point, and I think as councillor or former mayor Mark Bennett who led the charge, and we got the budget down to about 400,000 deficit. We're now seeing it ballooning out to 2.5 million and going through to 8 million over the next 10 years. There's nothing in this document that shows any strategic direction as to how we're going to move forward to repair the budget. We went to the community last year, in previous iterations of the budget to do a special rate variation, and in goodwill to the community, that was to be spent on infrastructure and also services. And that, to me, is now, we're not in a position now any better than what we were, and probably worse off than when we went to that process of getting community agreement for that. That was a way to try and bridge the gap. And I do acknowledge that the state government is constantly passing costs on to councils without any ability to raise revenue, and rate pegging, all those sort of things erode our ability to provide the services the community expects. But having said all that, we still have to work towards a balanced budget. And that's not evident here, nor the processes to achieve it. What the budget does give a whole lot of nice to haves, rather than focusing on the must haves. As a council with a deficit that we have, we should not be spending money on things that aren't essential. We should be focusing on those things that really enhance and provide the services for the community that we are required to do. So I can't support the budget in its current form. As I say, there's no strategic direction. There's a whole lot of nice to haves, things that aren't essential, that could be pared back to reduce the deficit. So that's my position.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams, I have a question. You say that there's lots of nice to haves. What is it that you'd take out of the budget or remove?
The classic is the kitchen for the town hall. There's no business case or justification for that. $100,000 on a kitchen. Most people that would use the town hall would use it on the basis of bringing in the food. The area is not big enough to do the preparation or the cooking. Most functions and events are run on that. That's a thing that I think is $100,000 not spent wisely.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillors, any speakers for the budget? Against the motion? Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just reiterate some of the comments I made at the time that this went out for exhibition. I'm very concerned that we see a constantly increasing deficit predicted over the next 10 years, ending up at around about $8 million. I mean, in earlier times, we used to measure the operating result in hundreds of thousands. We now appear to be measuring it in millions. We need to be doing something about it. It won't be one measure. It'll be a combination of measures. And one of the things that the last council looked at was the level of service. And this is a case of how good our roads and footpaths had to be. At the present time, they still are in need of significant work. at the level of service was a balance between what you paid in rates and the quality of the services we could deliver. We haven't had a great deal of discussion about that in this term, but something we need to return to. Now, as a council, I mean, we'll have very different views on how we might raise funds. As Dr. Sharp suggested, the obvious thing is rate revenue. We should probably be advocating for reform. But as a municipality that only has 41% of its land, or sorry, 41% of its land is not rateable, that is in part because of the schools that we provide to the broader community, the bushland and the other parks and facilities that we also provide to the broader community. Hunters Hill is a giver to the broader community, but we need to get some return on that, or alternatively, we should be lobbying state government for reform. I mean, the support of infrastructure like schools costs us a lot, and without that reform, well, I fear that the only way, or the most significant way of raising funds and improving the budget reposition is going to have to be increased rates. The last council took the responsible course, and Councillor Williams, Councillor Crasswell and I paid for that politically through untruthful information that was put out during that election campaign. So, yeah, but this is something that I think we need to have back on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Any other discussion? Speakers in favour? Against? Right of reply, Councillor Crasswell.
Definitely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I was trying to show my appreciation to the staff by keeping it succinct, but I simply can't let those comments pass without a little feedback. Enhancement of enhance and provide services to our community. I have to say, I've lived here over 20 years now, and the roads, footpaths, villages and parks are the most adequate, if not beautiful, that I've seen them, and the ones that aren't quite there yet are heading there in all of that time. I think that this council is doing a great job of delivering, and okay, we have a deficit and we have challenges ahead of us, and we need to work together better as a council rather than sort of sitting and sucking our thumbs and saying that what's happening isn't good enough. Because quite frankly, I am just sick of standing in this council meeting and hearing people criticise the work that our general manager and staff have been doing. I'm like, sorry, I don't want to sound all like, oh, aren't I amazing? Isn't council fabulous? We're not perfect, but we are not nearly as bad as our community is being led to believe. And in the last term of council, it was being led to believe it by a different group of people. And now it's being led to believe it by Councillor Sanderson and Councillor Williams. And I just can't abide it. I will also say that some things cost money and they don't generate money. And the social outcomes that we have going on in our community at the moment are really great. We're doing some great community education and events. Our committees are thriving much better than they were before. And I'm a big committee person. I'm a big community meeting person. But I think they've been run better in the last 2 years than I've ever seen them run before. And social outcomes like the happy hens, and there's just so much in our community that I'm so disappointed when we get into this meeting and all people can do is sad sack, because, sorry, it has been excellent. We have deficit, we have challenges ahead of us, but we're just not, seriously, at the end of Dr. Sharp's talk just now, I felt like packing up and going home. Why don't we just invite the state in to amalgamate us? Why don't we do that? Because if we're not all together trying to create positive suggestions and solutions to help our council generate income and to help our social outcomes in our community, then we're not together. And maybe someone else can do a better job of running it. And I'm the last person you would have heard say that. And quite frankly, if it came to it, I'll be the first person in the line to oppose it if it ever did happen again. But it's not the solution to just whinge. It's just simply not. this is a good report. It's a good budget. It delivers good things for our community that make it a desirable place to live and participate. And when people want to live here and participate, then we can justify putting the rates up again if we need to do it, because the state government keep taking our money and shifting their costs onto us at the same time. But we can't justify it at the moment, but we're getting there. Businesses will invest here, and it'll be a great suburb and a great council. And, you know, quite frankly, pack up and go home if all you want to do is whinge. Sorry.
Thank you, councillor Cresswell. I'll put the vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. I'll move to item 4.2, adoption of the financial 23-24 budget fees, charges, long-term financial plan and rates and charges. Move councillor Priest and seconded councillor Bagara. Any discuss? Oh, councillor Quinn, I'll give you one because I keep missing you on the little screen. Moved councillor Priest and seconded councillor Quinn. Councillor Priest, do you wish to speak to the motion? No. Any other discussion? Not. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. I'll move to item
4.3, sir.
4.3, summary of council investments as at 31st of May 2023 on page 181. Is there a mover? Moved councillor Quinn, seconded councillor Bagara. Any discussion? Councillor Quinn? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.4, local government remuneration tribunal annual report and determination council fees 23-24. Is there a mover? Councillor Crassoy, seconded councillor Bagara. Any discussion, councillor Crassoy? No. If not, speakers for? Against? Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I think we all deserve a pay increase. However, given the financial position, I mean, it's a tiny gesture, but I'll vote against this one.
Thank you, councillor Sanderson. Any speakers for? Any speakers against? Councillor
Yes. Yeah, I agree with councillor Sanderson. I'm not a whinger. I think that any organisation needs to have strategic direction, and that's lacking at the moment. And to want to know how the path goes forward is not whinging, it's about being responsible.
Thank you, councillor Williams. Is there a speaker for the motion? Councillor Bagara.
Question.
Through
you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a process or an ability for councillors to give up their remuneration?
I certainly am. I will defer to the director, but councillor, once you receive your councillor fees, which are not taxed, what you do with them is your own business. So I would suggest that yes, there is, but that would be done wholly personally. But I'll go through the general manager to the director.
Sorry, just to clarify the question, can you refuse to receive them? So it's not get them and give them back. Can you decline to be remunerated?
Sorry, through the general manager.
Through the general manager, essentially fees need a resolution for which one you set. So if the majority vote for the fees that are set, that's the fees that are paid.
I think that the question is, if a councillor chose to refuse their councillor fees, what would be?
I guess what I'm saying is if you vote not to take them, if the rest of the council vote to take it, that's what we are obligated to pay everybody.
Sorry, Director, I'll have to press you on that.
Can I?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Bagara, honesty is the best form of defence. I have never had that question asked of me before, and I actually will have to take it on notice and come back to you. I don't have that answer off the top of my head, and I've never ever had that asked before in a council meeting, but I respect the question and we will come back to you with an answer. But just for clarity, the question you're seeking is to answer. So if you're happy for us to take it on notice and come back to you, just for clarity, the question you're asking that you want us to answer is that if a councillor decides, let's call it for the want of a better word, outside the decision of council to vote on the tribunal's decision, that if a councillor opts to not receive any payment, can they do so?
Correct. And can I add a nuance to the question? Any payment or a lesser payment than the maximum voted on.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
You're a glutton for punishment, councillor Vergara. Councillors, is there any more discussion? Councillor Vergara.
I'll speak for the motion, and I'm going to do it on this basis. The term of this council is nearly up. Next year will approach fairly quickly. And one of the key words in this report is fairness and the ability to attract people who are quality, who want to do this job, and given the amount of work, who are probably remunerated for it. So to the extent that a modest increase will attract the next Councillor Preston or Councillor Crossoy, then I'm all for that.
Thank you, councillor Vergara. Councillors, any other discussion? Right of reply? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Councillors, I move to item 4.5, Fire and Rescue Inspection Report, 64 to 68 Gladesville Road, Hunters Hill, on page 247. Sorry. Move.
You're right. Sorry.
Moved councillor Sanderson. Is there a seconder? Seconded councillor Preston. Councillor Sanderson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Look, it's just another excellent report, so I commend the report and the actions.
Sorry, councillor. Any speakers against the motion? For the motion? Right of reply? Not needed. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Is carried. Unanimous. Councillors, move to item 4.6, Hunters Hill Local Planning Panel appointment of expert members. Might just hand to the General Manager to give some context to the resolution that's in the paper.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, I just we moved on very quickly at the start of the meeting, and I just missed the opportunity to advise that the acting director of town planning is in fact an apology tonight due to illness. So I will just want to flag with you in advance that I'm more than comfortable to answer any questions or floor on 4.6, and I will do my best there. But in relation to items 4.7, 4.8 and 4.9, without the director here this evening, if there is any questions to that, I may have to take them on notice tonight. I just want to flag that the acting director is ill, and could we please retrospectively ensure that is registered as an apology. I just didn't get the opportunity, Mr. Mayor, at the start of the meeting to say that. My apologies. And councillors, can I sincerely thank you for your support of item 4.5, because that is quite a serious issue that we need to move forward with. So thank you. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, that's fine, Mr. General Manager. Councillor Sanderson, are you moving the motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move an alternate motion, which is sent through earlier this afternoon.
We just have that on screen, if possible.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Sanderson, thank you for emailing these in advance. It makes a huge difference for the minute taker to have these typed in.
Yes, thank you.
My
Thank you,
apologies,
councillor
I
Sanderson.
couldn't email the other one through a bit earlier, but
It's
I
okay.
wanted to speak to Councillor Williams, who was in Europe and obviously got up a little bit later than the rest of us. What I'm proposing is that council write to the Minister for Planning, one, inquiring whether the ministerial direction of 7 December 2002 made by the former minister will remain in force, given the difficulty councillors are experiencing in increasing their LEP expert pools to 15 members. Two, inquiring whether the pool of independent experts will have new experts added in the near future. Three, seeking a recommendation on how council proceeds given the current outcome from the most recent call for expressions of interest. And if I could reword I'll hand this up so it can be corrected from what I sent through this afternoon. I would suggest 4 read seeking and seeking an appropriate extension of time for the appointment of additional experts once the above inquiries have been answered.
Thank you, councillor Sanderson. Is there a seconder to the motion?
Yes,
Councillor
councillor
Williams.
Williams.
Councillor Sanderson, just before you speak to your motion, I might just ask the General Manager if he could address particularly points 3 and 4 with relation to advice being sought from the department. I believe that those have already occurred, but General Manager, I'd just like you to give an update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So councillors, you will see that at the end of this report, there is a response letter from Mr. Melton McDonald, the Executive Director of Local and Regional Planning. There is a significant typographical error in that letter in the second paragraph where it states April 24, and in fact needs to be April 23. So, we had to chase this response on multiple occasions because I in fact wrote to the department in March. Now, what I actually asked for them, and I'm just going to go to this paragraph. So I've outlined the background of how we're short. We went through an EOI, et cetera, and then I said this. Logically, an option would be to continue advertising. In other words, go out and do another EOI. Please advise of the department's instructions in this regard, of which I got no instructions. All I got was a response saying, here's the fact sheet. Well, that's not really helpful or instructions, respectfully, to the department. So, just Councillor Sanderson, all I can advise you is in regards to point 1 of your proposed amendment here, is that thus far, and appreciate that the government is still the new government is very on its cycle, but there has been no indication to us in writing, and certainly, for example, in the regular meetings that I have with my fellow general managers in NESROC, there is no hint whatsoever of that changing. So respectfully, we'll see how this vote goes now, but I just so you know, I've been given no vibe, no indication whatsoever that there's going to be a change to that. I'm not saying that there won't be. I just don't have any thought for that at the moment. Secondly, there's been no correspondence whatsoever about new experts being added in the near future. So if this motion of yours that you're moving here, Councillor Sanderson, does go through, then sure, we can write and ask. Number 3, we've already asked for, can we keep going with an EOI? And the indication is they don't have any opposition to that. And my understanding of number 4 is that number 4, if I'm right, would essentially revert back to the current status if there's no desire for the new minister to change it. We're still short, right? Even though they haven't explicitly stated it in their response correspondence, I sense that what they're saying is you just keep going with advertising and expressions of interest till you can fill it. And if you can't fill it, and again, we're not the only council in this vote, so many councils in this vote, and we struggle to get the current members to commit to meetings. Like it's very difficult, hence why they probably want to increase the pool. So the final thing I do want to ask, just as a matter of process, Mr. Mayor. So Councillor Sanderson, can I just get some clarity here? These 4 points that you're proposing, is that above and beyond the recommendation that we've made to appoint the people who have applied on the EOI, or is this addition to those recommendations?
So it's in lieu of.
So it's completely removing. So think about that. If I've got it right, we ran a transparent EOI, and we had responses from 4 people, right? But you don't want to endorse them.
Not at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sanderson, you may speak to your motion.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson.
Good, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I have a number of concerns about this process, as I think everyone will be aware, having drafted the notice of motion that came about bringing about the processes that by which we appoint our local planning panel members. In terms of the ministerial direction of the 7th of December 2022, made by the former minister, it is proven to be unworkable, not just for us. I did look around at what other councils are doing. Most councils actually have less planning panel members than Hunters Hill does. I know Boston did that very deliberately to try to maintain consistency of decisions. I noticed that there is a recommendation before the Sydney City Council, I believe this week, and even they can only attract 11 expert members. This council is one that has always sort of spoken up when there's a problem, and I believe we should do in this particular case. It's going to be impractical for the vast bulk of councils to appoint 15 members. With respect to the last list of expert members that I saw, if I remember correctly, I think was dated the 13th of May 2021, meaning it exceeds 2 years in age, and inquiries made earlier this year show that had not been updated. I think it's something that again, a council that used to, voice its opinion when things were not right, we should be prompting for this list to be expanded. Sadly, at this week's or last week's meeting of the Conservation Advisory Panel, we learned of the death of one member of that panel. So I'm sure that he is not the only member of the panel that is no longer available. That really needs to be updated. Again, we've got a recommendation, as you said, that we just carry on looking for people. But I think it's important that councils should have some discretion as to who they have on their panels. Council should not be in a position where you're advertising you need 9 members. You only get 5 and you're obliged to appoint them all. We should have some process of selection. And I make no criticism of those who have expressed interest in serving on our panel, but I think it is completely wrong that we are obliged to appoint them simply on the basis of an expression of interest. I think we need to act in this area. My hope would be that the new minister will understand the issue relating to that ministerial direction that was made quite late in the term of the last government. And I think the case can be made for its removal. If that happens, that I think will solve the problem for many councils.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Any speaker? Before we do, so Councillor Sanderson, your intention is not to appoint any of the applicants,
not at this time,
and not proceed to change the LPP in deference to the ministerial direction.
Well, what I'm proposing, we ask for an extension of those appointments.
Okay.
In point 4.
Councillors, any speakers against the motion? For the motion. Councillor Williams?
Yes. Yep. I thank Councillor Sanderson for bringing this forward. It is one of the most crucial part of council's processes to ensure that we have a panel that understands and reflects the values and needs of our local area, and to some extent that process has been availed through what we've done so far with the selection process. I would not like to see that watered down or just be forced into taking people to meet a government objective. As council, we should be advocating strongly to make sure that local planning panels are workable, and they're not workable if you're forcing people onto them or you're running them at a lower level than what is so-called required by legislation. It doesn't meet anybody's objectives. And why would anybody apply to be on a panel if they're one of 16 and they might be chosen and only two at a time are chosen? It'll be a lifetime before you actually get to sit on the panel. There's no incentive or opportunity for people to really make a contribution if you've got so many on. So the whole process is flawed. I think council has a strong process in place for how it appointed its current panel, and we shouldn't dilute that process with a government providing an unrealistic and unachievable layer over the top. So I support the motion, and I think we as a council should be advocating strongly to the government, the new government, that change is needed here.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any speakers against? Paul? I'll speak against the motion. It's not normal, but I have a genuine concern when, as the General Manager has put it, we have gone out in good faith and in compliance with a direction from the previous government that we have sought expressions of interest, and they have come in when we have a target of appointing 15 members to this panel, and we are still well short of that. Why we wouldn't in the interim, and I have no problem with writing to the Minister as articulated in points 1 and 2 of the motion. Points 3 and 4 of the motion have been covered off by the General Manager, as we've heard, but I have an issue in leaving those applicants in limbo who may lose interest in serving on the Hunters Hill Local Planning Panel in the period in which we are seeking clarification. So given we have to get to the number 15, and even with the appointment of these panel members, we are only at 9, I see no reason why we would be refusing to appoint these panel members. Councillors, is there any more discussion in relation to the motion on the floor? Any speakers against? For? If not, Councillor Sanderson, right of reply.
Mr. Mayor, I just simply reiterate that it's not right for council to be forced to appoint anyone who comes along. I do have concerns also that the expression of interest process wasn't initiated by the governing body of council. I found out about it when I saw an advertisement in a local paper. I believe that should have come to council at that stage. So council had the opportunity to put in place the measures that we have done in the past that have been so successful in appointing the very strong panel members that we currently have.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That is lost. Councillors, is there another motion? Councillor Vergara?
The one in the paper.
Move in the paper. Second. Councillor Quinn. Councillor Vergara, do you wish to speak the motion? No. Any other discussion? Councillor Crasso speaking for.
Mr. Mayor, just to ask a question.
Yes.
Would you write to the Minister?
I'm very happy to write to the Minister anyway. That's not an issue.
Would you like that added as an amendment?
I can add it as an amendment. I'm happy to do it and to circulate any response in the Chronicle if need be.
No, if you're.
I'm comfortable just to. I'm comfortable just to make that undertaking. Councillors, any speakers against? For? Right of reply? Not necessary. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried.
Against.
Councillors, we move to the development applications determined by the DCU in May 2023. Any speak? Move Councillor Quinn, seconded Councillor Crass, or any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Hunters Hill, development applications determined under delegated authority in May 2023. Item 4.8. Moved Councillor Priest and seconded Councillor Sanderson. Any discussion? If not, I will move. Put the motion. All those in favour? Against?
Aye.
It is carried. Item 4.9. Report on legal matters June 2023. Is there a mover? Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Sanderson. Any discussion? No. If not, I will put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
That is carried. Item 4.10, audit of trees affected by Spanish moss. Moved Councillor Crassoy, seconded Councillor Sanderson. Any discussion? I'm guessing there will be. Oh no, okay. Damn. Any discussion? I love the Spanish moss. Any speakers for? Against? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously, I might add. Items 4.11, Parks and Leisure Australia National Conference. Is there a mover? Councillor Crassoy, seconded Councillor Prieston. Councillor Crassoy, do you wish to speak to your motion and report?
I am. I'm so excited to actually be able to report to council on a conference that I've attended for my own Council of Professional Development, but also to bring back lots of joy and excitement, which you've heard over the last 7 months, every time anything to do with a park or leisure comes up. It was a fantastic conference. I can't recommend it to the operational side of council more highly. I'm tabling. Let me just say, hold. Because
no props in the chamber.
No props in the chamber. Because seriously, every stand in the exhibition hall was interesting. There were plenty of different kinds of exercise equipment, solar powered barbecues, sporting field information, synthetic and natural options, public art, parks, children's play equipment, exercise equipment and play equipment that was incorporated into public art. There was the whole lot, but there was also just a whole lot of information sharing from actually all over the world, but certainly all over Australia. The report's quite simple and small, but if you go to the website that I've linked in the report, you can see all of the different reports. They talked about pickleball, they talked about parkour, and they gave demonstrations about it. There was a fascinating talk that I went to about the truth behind eucalyptus and gum trees, and they're not the widow makers we believe them to be. So there's just so much information for a councillor or for a member of the operational team, or dare I say for a member of the Sport and Rec Committee to consider attending this year's conference or a conference into the future. I really, there's some coffee table type tomes in here that are so worth looking at, all around sustainability and sustainable design, and you know, I'll wax on, but I'll also just thank the council for supporting professional development, because I think it's critical to being passionate about the work that you do. And I think our places, our villages and our play spaces, but also the passive recreation areas in our suburb are critical to it being a desirable place to live. So thank you for the opportunity to attend, and my apologies for it taking so long for me to report on.
Thank you, Councillor Craswell, and thank you for your work in putting the report together and for attending. Councillors, any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against?
Aye.
Carried. Councillors, item 4.12, councillor briefings and workshops. Is there a mover? Moved Councillor Craswell, seconded Councillor Vergara. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against?
Aye.
That is carried. Item 4.13, minutes of the meeting of the Audit Risk Improvement Committee held on 14th June 2023. Is there a mover? Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Crassoy. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against?
Aye.
It is carried. Item 4.14, minutes of the Conservation Advisory Panel held 17th of May 2023. Is there a mover? Councillor Sanderson, seconded. Councillor Williams.
Yes.
Any discussion? Councillor Sanderson, I might ask who on CAP passed?
It wasn't a member of CAP, it was Ian Stapleton, who has done some architectural work around, or particularly the one I know of is Fig Tree House. He did express interest in becoming a member of a local planning panel in 2018, but he has done quite a lot of work in Hunters Hill. But yeah, there's some condolence was expressed by members of CAP on learning of that.
Thank you. Councillors, any more discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 4.15, minutes of the Cultural Events Advisory Committee meeting held 16th of May 2023. Is there a mover? Councillor Prieston, seconded. Councillor Crassoy, any discussion? If not, put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Councillors, that brings us to the end of our of our business. Is there any general business or other items? If not, the General Manager has an item that he wants to bring to our attention.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, can I please just take the liberty of 30 seconds in general business to, I appreciate and very much thank a couple of councillors earlier this evening for passing comment on this. But can I just please place on the record at our council meeting my sincere appreciation for the efforts of our staff in regards to the sustainability event. We show up at these events and the praise and feedback from the community has been amazing, but takes an enormous amount of work. So first of all, thank you to both the events committee and the sustainability committee, but I just want to pass on my appreciation to the staff. They went above and beyond to kick off a new event that I'm very confident will become annual and will build. I'm now an expert in making smoothies via bikes. And also, can I also say, within inside of 36 hours, we then transitioned the entire town hall to what I would regard as one of the best citizenship ceremonies I have ever been to. And we should be immensely proud as a council of how we executed that event. I think you made reference, Mr. Mayor, on the night that it was the second largest one you've ever been to during your term on council. But again, the staff, I've been to a lot of them, first rate. They just run smoothly, and I just want to thank the staff.
Thank you, General Manager. Thank you. And thank you to the staff. And I'm glad the General Manager was there to remind all the citizens that became Australian citizens from British citizens who they needed to go for in the cricket. Councillors, Councillor Sanderson.
Mr. Mayor, would it be appropriate for council to move an expression of thanks to staff?
Absolutely. Move Councillor Sanderson. Is there a second? Councillor Prieston. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Thank you to all the staff for putting a wonderful event together and for transitioning the town hall. The only other business, and I note that councillors Quinn and Williams are both over representing council at the Fete de Marguerite at Levisine, is that we have 5 of the 6 of our students have arrived from Levisine at Hunters Hill Town Hall this afternoon, and there was a reception for them. We are awaiting the 6th. There's no problems. They're just coming a little later. So we look forward to hosting them for the next 6 weeks. And I'd just like to thank the committee for all the work that they do for the exchange program, which we're not allowed to call an exchange program anymore because it's now a cultural program. Councillor Quinn.
And Mr. Mayor, I just mentioned that one of those students is the first of the next generation of students. So she's the daughter of one of the original students in the early days that did an exchange.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Councillors, is there any other items of general business? If not, I will close the meeting at 8:43 p.m. Thank you for all your attendance.
Thank you, Councillor.